welcome everyone. It's great to have all of you with us today. My name is Marcel Kauston. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Julian Jaynes Society. This is the second installment of our new Julian Jaynes Society interview series. We had Brian McVeigh last month. If you missed that one, it's now posted, so be sure to check that out. And I'm very excited to welcome Boban Dedovic with us today. Boban is a Croatian-American scholar of psychohistory and a graduate student at the University of Chicago. He has a BA in Religions of the Ancient Near East from the University of Maryland, College Park, as well as a BS in social psychology from the University of Maryland. He has training in ancient languages like classical Latin and others, and told me that his goal is to work to incorporate methods of hard science into the humanities. Boban also leads the Omnica Foundation, which is a nonprofit that digitizes and makes available the world's mythological stories. His professional background is in computer science, and he has recently released a long paper about mental language in Homer that we're going to be delving into today. And I should also mention that Boban has been of tremendous help with the Julian Jaynes Society and assisting us greatly with the new version of the website that we launched last year and other technological issues. So Boban, welcome.
Thank you for having me here, Marcel. I'm really excited and honored to have an opportunity to just talk about something that I spent a good amount of time on. So thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So why don't you start by just giving everyone a sense of the program that you're in right now at the University of Chicago, what it's like, what you've been learning, and how that background kind of informs the study that you released recently.
Sure. So right now I'm at the University of Chicago. It's just a graduate program, but it's a special one that allows you to basically build your own program. So I'm just doing a basic thesis track, and I'm only studying ancient languages. So I've moved into the intermediate level for both Middle Egyptian and Old Babylonian. And the people at the Oriental Institute and the Near Eastern Languages and Cultures Department, they're really some of the brightest people that I've ever met there. And my thesis, which will hopefully be done by the end of the year, is about mental language, not surprisingly, in the story of Sinuhe, which is a Middle Egyptian tale about a man displaced from his home, and he's living amongst Asiatic peoples. That's basically what I'm doing, and I'm just trying to learn as much as I can around people that are much smarter than me in those topics. So, yeah.
Great. So, in order to set the table, we're going to be talking a lot about the Iliad and the Odyssey today. Basically, a lot of the material that Jaynes covers in Book 2, Chapter 5, The Intellectual Consciousness of Greece. It's probably one of the more difficult chapters in Jaynes's book. So I'm really glad that we're going to be discussing it today, a lot of the topics that he covers. Can you tell us a little bit about the authorship of the Iliad and the Odyssey, just to start with?
Sure. And just based on, Marcel, what we talked about before, the paper is very technical. It has a lot of information about pretty much all the background and everything. But for the purpose of this discussion, we agreed it was very important to try and keep things on a layman or general level, just so it's approachable by a wide audience. So for that reason, most of my answers here are going to be simplifications, and if there's anything kind of more specific, I'm sure it's probably in the paper. But having said that, basically these are just very long pieces of epic poetry in an archaic Greek script. They're said to be written down about 750 BCE, somewhere around there. This is before the classical period in Greece. And normally or traditionally, people assumed that it was done by a single man named Homer, one in his youth and then one in his older age. But in the 20s and 30s, a man from Harvard named Milman Parry, who passed away, he did some work with Yugoslavian folk tales, and he basically discovered, he was a classicist, and he discovered these patterns of poetry and meter. And he basically took what he found, which ironically enough is my native language, Serbo-Croatian. He took this and he applied it to his analysis of Greek texts. And in his analyses, he concluded that this was actually poetry and it was passed down orally among generations. So to answer your question directly, most people believe it's a single man named Homer, but there is literally no actual evidence for that. And instead, the accepted view very much is there was an oral tradition passed down through groups of people, and then it was performed. And with the invention of writing, then you had basically some restoration and changes and so forth. So it's really the author. It's a cultural tradition, and I think it's more appropriate to call it the Homeric tradition instead of Homer as a single man.
Thank you for that. I think that's an important point for people to understand. What is the time frame that we're talking about in terms of the Iliad versus the Odyssey, and what evidence? James mentions a little bit of evidence for why he felt there was a later date for the Odyssey having to do with Odysseus and some historical facts. But what is the evidence for the Iliad being of an older origin than the Odyssey, and what are the relative dates?
So again, they were written down roughly 750 BC, but this does not necessarily mean that they were created at that point, because the stories, they just